Alright, what's up with y'all? So look, man, I'm back again with another video, and it's just a brief recap on this whole Diddy situation. Day 2 of the trial that took place yesterday. Today is day 3. I'm just giving y'all a brief recap as the days go by. Pretty much the day afterwards, because I'm trying to wait for every single detail to come out before I actually do a video over the whole situation. But look, if you're a supporter of the channel, make sure y'all hitting that like button, man, and leaving a comment here and there. That way y'all can stay engaged with the channel and continue to receive notifications when I drop videos and things like that, if you're rocking with me and trying to stay locked in with the channel. Other than that, man, I appreciate y'all for being here. I hope that everything is okay with you and your family, and I'm wishing y'all nothing but the best in every aspect of y'all's life. When I say that, I'm only talking to those who say it back to me in return, and to those who reciprocate the same energy back to me, but just can't type it out for whatever the reason may be. Now listen, this right here so kinky, freaky. It's all type of different shit, man. We finna break all of this down and watch as much as we can right now. But look, basically, some of the things that I want to get directly into is just basically, I want to send some positive vibes out, because this whole situation got like a bad vibe, like a demonic entity around it. Like, it's just some weirdo shit in my personal opinion. But, you know, the man that's basically up there doing all of this talking, the male escort, he basically fell in love with Cassie, in my personal opinion. He talking about how pretty she was. He couldn't believe that she was doing this and doing that. They had a relationship outside of Diddy. And everything I'm saying in this video from beginning to the end is all allegedly. It's just my thoughts and opinions and some of the things that I did here. But basically, he said that a lot of weird shit was happening. He said that he actually witnessed them fighting. And he just didn't want to be involved with them like that afterwards. He was in the corner looking like what R. Kelly called his damn self, the Pied Piper. He was over there with a bandana over his face or some shit like that, watching them get it in, play games with each other, baby oil and lotion each other down. Said that Diddy was over there playing with himself over there in that corner, watching them, being I can't say the words, but yeah, y'all know what I'm talking about. Okay, as far as Cassie said that when the male, escort finished, y'all know what I'm talking about, when he finished, when he accumulated his juice, he would put it on her, and then he would want, when I say he, damn, my stomach growled. Let me hear him get the hell up off of here. But yeah, he said he would finish, he accumulate his juice and put it on her, and said that Diddy would want the juice on him. Now that right there just crazy. I don't know. Hey man, if that's true, boy, cuz out here sweeter than pie, man. I'm trying to tell you, bro. But hey, if that's what you choose to do in your bedroom, that's what you choose to do in your bedroom. It's just the fact that all of this is, allegedly unwanted. It's forced and shit like this. So that's where the problem kick in with me, you know what I'm saying? But ultimately, we don't know what's true. We was not there. It's just all, I don't think we can do is just really just listen to what they got to say and come up with our own opinions at the end of the day. I just don't want to put nothing on nobody because we wasn't there. We don't know exactly. But she also stated that Diddy would try to make her call him her late Pawpaw's name, which is some weirdo shit in my personal opinion too. But ultimately, man, it's a lot more things that we're going to get into this video right here about. I just want to touch those things because they probably won't mention them. But yes, she said that he would want the juice on him, on his nips. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like this shit, that was crazy as hell. That shit, you know how shit get hard and sticky? Ooh, man, they over there cutting up. But let's go ahead and get into this, man. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on everything. We'll talk about this in the comment section. Let's go.
Turn now to the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, once one of entertainment's biggest success stories, now looking at the possibility of life behind bars. In this second day of testimony, the prosecution presenting a pivotal witness, captivating the courtroom, and just a warning, this story contains accounts, descriptions, and visual content of actual and alleged events that some may find.
Morning, everyone.
How is he feeling?
You gotta move, bro. You gotta move. You gotta move.
Is there a message for Cassie? Is she ready?
She's very ready and confident. Star witness Cassie Ventura giving explosive and lurid testimony on the stand today in a packed New York City courtroom.
I admire her courage in coming here today.
For day 2 of the sex trafficking and racketeering case against Sean Diddy Combs. Diddy's former girlfriend of nearly a decade, Cassie, is at the center of the case. Her shocking 2023 allegations and civil lawsuit helped spur federal prosecutors to bring charges against the disgraced mogul. Diddy denied her allegations and settled that suit without admitting wrongdoing.
This case rises and falls on Cassie Ventura. So when the prosecution said they were calling Cassie Ventura, literally it almost was like everyone in the courtroom turned their heads to see who's going to walk inside of the courtroom and walk past us to go into the witness chair.
Cassie was at times soft-spoken as she's describing her sex life for the better part of 10 years that she called dehumanizing and degrading and
In court, Cassie wearing a form-fitting brown dress showing her late-stage pregnancy. The singer expecting her third child with her husband, Alex Fon, in court to support her, while Combs' mother and 4 of his children sat behind him. It was the first time Cassie and Diddy have faced each other publicly in 7 years.
This is the first time that Sean Combs and Cassie have seen each other since the funeral of Kim Porter. Puffy was looking at her, but Cassie didn't even bother to look at him. She's looking directly at the prosecutor and not making eye contact with Sean Combs.
Prosecutors launching into the heart of the case, the so-called freak-offs.
The jury saw Cassie Ventura break down and sob as she described these marathon sexual encounters with male prostitutes, as she said, sex with strangers that she didn't want to be having sex with.
Cassie testified how within the first year of their relationship, Combs initially proposed encounters that he called voyeurism, where he would watch me have intercourse and sexual activity with a third party, specifically another man. Cassie testifies she continued to participate in freak-offs. I knew it wasn't something I wanted to be doing, but I was in love and wanting to make him happy. I didn't feel like I had much of a choice, didn't really know what no could turn into. During opening statements, Diddy's defense arguing the sexual relationships were consensual and not coerced, saying the rapper lived a swingers lifestyle. But Cassie saying the freak-offs became so frequent, they became weekly events. Prosecutor Emily Johnson asking, who decided when a freak-off was over? Ultimately, it would be Sean. Did you want to engage in every freak-off that you participated in? No, I just felt like it was all I was good for to him. I just felt pretty horrible about myself. I felt disgusting. I was humiliated. Every freak-off was, like, directed by Sean, like he knew specifically where he wanted everyone to be. The lighting and such.
Well, she did say that she engaged in a lot of these freak-offs because she wanted to feel that connection with Sean Combs and to satisfy him.
Cassie breaking her silence in court on the now infamous surveillance video where Diddy is seen beating her in a Los Angeles hotel. That footage played again for the jury. Cassie saying she...
Now, as of today, you know what I'm saying? Basically, they're saying that the 15-minute video was released of this whole situation, and they're saying that she didn't fight him at all in the video. I haven't seen it, but they're saying that was played today, you know what I'm saying? And I just feel like that if that is the case, that he didn't, you know, like have to fight her at all, it was just all him, then, you know, that's going to play into what she's trying to say a whole lot. And now they're also saying that, you remember yesterday, I don't know if you remember or not, but yesterday, they were saying that, you know, well, the male escort said that she asked for him to, you know, pee, right? And she said she didn't want that at all either, you know what I'm saying? And it was multiple men who did it, and she choked, and because it was so much and just different shit like that. And I just feel like, man, this whole situation just crazy as hell. And they said that they had to, she said that, no, he said that he thought he was doing it wrong because they had to stop him because he didn't know that he was just supposed to do a little bit. He did a whole, you know, cycle. I gotta word shit a certain way, but yeah. So I just feel like that it's a lot of shit that's damaging mentally and shit like that goes into the if that's really the case. You know what I'm saying? And I'm only saying if because I don't know. I don't want to victim shame, and I don't want to take a side or go against nobody without knowing everything that happened because. You know, it's just a crazy situation. It's just how you're supposed to be. You know, I let y'all do y'all thoughts and opinions. And I got my own, too. I just got to, you know, do certain shit a certain way when you got a platform. But, yeah, man, this situation here is just crazy as hell. And ain't no telling how many more people were associated with these things because everybody was chilling with Diddy. You know what I'm saying? But, hey, let's get back into it.
It's actually trying to escape a freak-off. There was a lot of drinking, a lot of partying. In the middle of it, I'm not sure what happened. I got hit by Sean, and I had a black eye. When I chose to leave, I grabbed what I could and got out. And Sean followed me into the hallway before the elevators and grabbed me up, threw me on the ground, kicked me, tried to drag me back to the room. When prosecutor Emily Johnson asked, how frequently was Sean physical with you during your relationship, she responded, too frequently. Diddy has denied all charges. Disturbing video also part of the defense's opening arguments, arguing that it was an act of domestic violence. Diddy's attorney, Tinny Garrigo, saying, domestic violence is not sex trafficking. Had he been charged with domestic violence, had he been charged with assault, we would not be here right now.
Cassie Ventura said Sean Combs eventually set up recording equipment so he could record the freak-offs. Cassie said she doesn't want anyone seeing these videos, and she called them blackmail material. Prosecutors do plan to show them. They will not be released to the public.
Cassie telling the jury how she numbed herself to be with the male escorts, while Combs allegedly watched and masturbated.
Cassie said she experienced freak-offs that would last 2 or 3, even 4 days. And she took drugs that she said Sean Combs supplied beforehand.
Cassie Ventura said that these freak-offs became like a full-time job for her in order to arrange it, in order to get physically ready for it, in order to recover after the fact, because some of these freak-offs will sometimes have lasted even up to 4 days without her sleeping, or to get over narcotics that she had in her body.
Cassie telling the court the freak-offs took place in nearly all of Combs' homes, from New York, Miami, LA, Atlanta, and Las Vegas, to Turks and Caicos and Ibiza, Spain. The singer saying the rooms where they took place were a mess, oil, candle wax all over the place, and smelled super pungent, from candles, body odor, and urine. Even describing to the court how Combs preferred Johnson's baby oil because he liked bodies to be glistening.
She said that sometimes about 10 bottles of baby oil was actually used.
Cassie also...
You know that shit still in somebody's skin, boy. Baby oil takes so long to use, and it be bad. You can't just wash it off, man. 10 bottles. Then I say something about a swimming pool or something that he wanted full of baby oil or something like that. But yeah, you know, whatever the hell Diddy got going on mentally, you know what I'm saying? If this is all true, bro, he needs some therapy, man. You know what I'm saying? He needs to get checked out. This shit foul, boy, if this shit really, really true. But I just feel like this whole situation will be, you know, exposing a lot, like as far as other people too, because I don't feel like it's just going to be Diddy. They're going to be bringing other people in this in some type of way, shape, form, or fashion, in my personal opinion. I just hate that this whole situation really went the way that it went. I want to say, you know, none of this is funny, but I got a certain sense of humor for those who might be new to my channel. I just feel that when you are associated with someone that is into shit like this, you will pick up some of their habits and you will be somewhat groomed. I feel like people are just taking every single thing that's being said with a grain of salt and just running with every single narrative. It's just best to sit back and just take the information in and then come up with a synopsis at the end of this whole situation, because we really just don't know who to believe. But ultimately, I'm not saying Cassie is lying or wrong or anything like that, but I can see what some of y'all are saying, that she's not totally innocent, but at the same time, you could think that what you're doing is right because of what you've been associated with for so long. So it can go both ways. I just don't want to, you know, be in the middle of that shit like that, because I don't know. You feel me? I just want to say, if you have been through a situation like this or anything in this caliber, I just want to say that I hope that you can get the help that you need. You feel me? Because it's very, very traumatizing. You know what I'm saying? If everything is what everything is said to be. Let's get back into it.
Testifying her recording career stalled during their relationship. As prosecutors continue building their case, Cassie testified about Diddy's insulated world.
She talked about seeing guns. She talked about his ability to get violent. She talked about people around him, his staff and his security that supplied the freak-offs and supplied her drugs. And those elements are crucial if prosecutors are going to prove Sean Combs' guilt on racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking charges.
Cassie Ventura returns to the witness stand Wednesday.
That's when the fireworks are going to come out, because the question is going to be how is the defense going to cross-examine her?
Sean Combs. Now, remember, she's coming in there, 8.5 months pregnant, coming in after the testimony of 2 other witnesses. There is a lot to get into. We're going to give you a comprehensive breakdown of every major moment from today's proceedings, because as you know, there are no cameras in that courtroom. There is no audio of what happened. But we got the next best thing. We got Law & Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner, who was inside that courtroom witnessing firsthand everything that happened today. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on. I know this has already been an exhausting day, particularly about what you heard in that courtroom. We will get to that. Before we even get into the testimony, real quick, is it just insane out there again? Are we seeing tons of people, reporters, spectators? Just tell us what the scene looks like right now.
The scene honestly kind of mirrored day one, which was opening statements. You know, day two was really no different. A lot of people trying to get inside that courthouse, a lot of people trying to get inside that courtroom, especially for the big testimony that we were all expecting today. Of course, that being Cassie Ventura taking the stand. And so it was a lot of people just trying to kind of weasel their way in through. I was able to get inside that courtroom really just with a luck and a prayer and also a little connections, which always helps in this case. But really, it's just madness over here at the courthouse. I mean, there's media campouts just extending across the block. A lot of public interest in this case as well, too, from people who just either want to get a glimpse of either Diddy, his family, just be inside that courtroom, just be inside the courthouse, even if they're in the overflow room and able to kind of watch the proceedings that way. But there's definitely a lot of interest in the case, and I don't expect that to die down even throughout this week.
No, and this was expected with Cassie Ventura taking the stand. Now, before we get to her testimony, the day actually started with finishing up the testimony, the cross-examination of Daniel Phillip. That is that male escort, male performer, I should say, who began his testimony yesterday, talked about how Diddy allegedly paid him to have sex with Cassie Ventura, all while Diddy was not only watching but recording. And this happened to have, apparently happened several times. Again, Combs is charged with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution. So we're talking about coerced sexual performances. Key witness here. Elizabeth, what came out of cross-examination today of this witness?
This was yesterday.
Well, the cross-examination was continued by Xavier Donaldson, and it was interesting to kind of see him in action even yesterday as well as today, because he's a little feisty when it came to this particular witness. He was essentially questioning him on, returning to the Gramercy Park Hotel. Why was Diddy sitting in the corner? Why did he notice that specifically? He was asked about what was going on while he and Cassie were having sex. Donaldson asked, did Cassie take the lead? He says, he being Daniel Phillip, said they both did their thing. He was asked, was Cassie drunk? Daniel Phillip responded no. Was Cassie high? Daniel Phillip responded no. Did Cassie pay him or pay for a hotel? Daniel Phillip responded saying he just didn't know. They were talking about the alleged assault that had happened at Cassie's apartment, something that Cassie herself had even testified about as well too. And so essentially a lot of these questions back and forth were just pretty much to kind of get clarity. There were some points in the cross-examination I was kind of like, where is this going? But maybe from the defense's perspective, they were essentially trying to make that argument that Cassie she was coherent. She wasn't under the influence of any type of drugs or alcohol when these freakoffs were occurring, or when these encounters were occurring, I should say. What was interesting about Daniel Phillip when he had actually walked into the courtroom, something that a lot of us in the press kind of noticed, is he walked inside with his sunglasses on, which, for the most part, we haven't seen many witnesses do that. I mean, only 3 have taken the stand so far, but it was definitely an interesting moment. I mean, earlier this morning, it wasn't raining just yet, but, it wasn't exactly sunny too. So we were kind of like, why is he wearing sunglasses? And even when he got off the witness stand, he put the sunglasses right back on, and just walked out of the courtroom. But another interesting point, Jesse, that they were kind of talking about today was talking about an incident, or not even an incident per se, but talking about a moment in December of 2023. And this is when Xavier Donaldson brought up Daniel's friend named Malia. And essentially, they were questioned, or Daniel Phillip was questioned about when he saw Cassie outside of the Dream Hotel here in downtown New York City. Apparently, Daniel Phillip had told this friend Malia about his relationship, and I put that in quotations even here in my notes, about his relationship with Cassie. Said that Cassie asked to call him later on to meet her. The defense says it was for another experience, and Phillip said no, that wasn't necessarily the case. The defense said so Cassie called for a one-on-one after she wasn't with Diddy any longer. And so then another interesting point that was brought up was just that Daniel Phillip had met with federal prosecutors in March of just this year, so just a couple months back, and they were talking about essentially kind of what one thing I kind of remember from Daniel Phillip's testimony is just kind of the way he would talk about Cassie per se. Like, for example, yesterday he had said that Cassie was one of the most beautiful women that he had ever seen. He had also said had Cassie given him a chance that he would absolutely date her. So it seems like he kind of had more on his end, more of a platonic feeling towards Cassie, especially kind of in that need to kind of protect her. So, Phillip said that, Daniel Phillip, said that he wasn't necessarily jealous seeing Diddy have sex with Cassie, but he had allegedly told federal prosecutors that he was in October 7th of 2024. And this is where a sidebar had happened. And so after the sidebar was over, Daniel Phillip was questioned again, would he feel jealous because he had liked Cassie romantically? And so Daniel Phillip said he didn't recall saying that to prosecutors. And so when the redirect happened, Maureen Comey just really kind of had to redirect all of the cross-examination, all of the back and forth, kind of back to a focus. So she asked, about Diddy directing and why that wasn't brought up necessarily. Said that Diddy had directed Cassie to give him, oral, rub baby oil on him. They were asked, Daniel Phillip was asked about money, given more money for sex, $3,800 more than he would be if he were to come over to dance, or for time, I should say. He said he was paid anywhere between $700 to $5,000, $6,000 just for sex, and then essentially he's paid $0 if he didn't have sex with Cassie or in the room with Diddy. And so, during the redirect, Daniel Phillip said Cassie normally didn't respond to his text messages, but then there was a point that, after Diddy had beat Cassie, that Diddy was actually trying to get Cassie to continue to perform sexually with Daniel Phillip, and said that Daniel couldn't get an erection after kind of hearing the slaps going on in a nearby room. He said he essentially just wanted to hug her because he could tell that she was shaking and that she was afraid, and that pretty much reaffirmed that Diddy beat Cassie essentially, and even called her the B word. And so then they were talking under the recross. He was asked again about, text messages that he said he didn't receive responses to. And then some of the exhibits were showing that, Cassie had responded very casually to some of those messages. So some of those were pretty much the big takeaways from Daniel Phillip's recross, redirect, recross. And so, and then that essentially wrapped him up as a witness. He was off the stand probably within an hour of when court had began, and he put on his shades and just walked out of the courtroom. It seemed like Diddy was kind of, obviously he was listening at every single witness who had taken the stand thus far in this case, but definitely Diddy had his eyes on Daniel Phillip, was paying very close attention to what he said, again, participating very much so in his defense by jotting notes down, handing them off to his attorney, listening to Xavier Donaldson do the cross-examination and even the recross as well too. And so definitely Diddy's eyes were very laser focused on this witness and the following witness too, who we all know to be Cassie Ventura.
Yeah, it seems to me the defense was really trying to hone in the fact, well, who paid you, $700, $6,000 an episode? Well, it was Cassandra Ventura. She was the one in control. She was the one who was enjoying this. She was a partner in what was going on and not a victim. That there was this text message, I think, that was sent to that you told them both that you love them. So it wasn't anything nefarious that was going on, that she was being forced into this criminal sexual arrangement, but she was a willing participant, and it just might be a kinky, sexy episode, but not a crime. So I kind of understand where the defense was going by ultimately cross-examining him. But now we got to talk about Cassandra Ventura. So before we even get into the substance of what she had to say, and there is a lot to get there, she walks in, okay? Tell us what the environment was like with her walking in, and how did she appear? And did she ever look at Sean Combs, either when she got on the stand, during her testimony? Did he ever look at her? Paint the picture of what that was like before we even get into the substance of what she had to say.
Yeah, it was definitely a moment a lot of us were kind of expecting. We were all thinking it was going to be like a pin drop moment, but really it kind of happened within the blink of an eye of her coming in to the courtroom. So essentially, she walks inside the courtroom. She's wearing a long brown dress. She is very, very visibly pregnant, to a point where I thought, oh my goodness, just stand by, everyone. It was, that was very apparent. That was very obvious. So she kind of walked in. It's not like she was smiling necessarily or looking at familiar faces that she may have known in her past, i.e. Diddy's family, and waving at them. That was not the case at all. She kept laser focused. She walked just straight to the witness stand. She had kind of escorts take her over there, but she didn't look in Diddy's direction. From what I could see, I didn't see her once kind of look over or give him an eye or a look or anything like that. She just walked immediately to the witness stand. She raised her right hand. She swore the oath to testify. And even for the duration of the the duration of her testimony today, for the most part, I didn't even catch her glimpsing at the defense table. For the most part, she kept laser focused on Emily Johnson as Emily Johnson was asking her questions. Probably the only people outside of Emily Johnson and possibly even her husband that she was eyeing in the courtroom was probably little moments at the jury, when they had came in back from, their breaks or a quick bathroom break and that type of sort. And it was just a very kind of faint smile. And so for the most part, from what I could see of her, it didn't seem like she kind of paid Diddy any type of mind, but you can only guess how she's feeling being inside that courtroom. Us as reporters, we're all jotting down these notes. Diddy's family's inside that courtroom listening to all of this testimony. Then you have Cassie's side of the family, who's inside that courtroom as well, that even including her husband, Alex, as well as her brother. I believe her mother was inside that courtroom as well too, as well as Cassie's attorney, Doug Wigder. So for the most part, I didn't see her, even when she had exited the courtroom, even looking at the defense's side or anything like that. And so she was there to do what she had needed to do, and that was to testify. To me, I wasn't catching that she was there really for a reunion or any type of sorts. But it's interesting because, according to the defense, the last time Diddy and Cassie were in a room together or in the same vicinity as each other was Kim Porter's memorial back in 2018. That's what the defense said in their opening statement yesterday. And so, this was a moment that I'm sure she had waited for a long time, probably didn't want to be very close to giving birth or anything like that while she's taking the stand. But, it's been a long time since Diddy and Cassie were in the same room with each other, let alone the same vicinity as each other.
Right. So when she started testifying, my understanding, explained that when she first met Sean Combs and began a romantic relationship with him, it was good at first, right? I mean, talk to us about the beginning of the relationship and how she described him, because I think that's important in order to understand the context, and also maybe a potentially to be used by the prosecution and potential win for the defense.
Yeah, so, the questioning was done by Emily Johnson. One of the first few questions that Emily Johnson had asked Cassie was, how old are you? So Cassie is now 38 years old. So I say that just in the context of when she met Diddy. She met Diddy around 2005. That was 20 years ago. The prosecution and even the defense had said that she was just 19 years old when she had met Diddy. She had said she had signed with Bad Boy in 2006, and she had signed actually a 10-album deal. She said she knew Diddy and remembered him. Well, I say Diddy, but she referred to him as Sean throughout her entire testimony. But she knew who she calls Sean as somebody who was larger than life, but didn't necessarily know too much about him personally. So, the prosecution was asking, when did she release her album? That was in August of 2006. But then, surprisingly, no more albums came after that. Remember, she signed a 10-album deal, yet it was only one album that was released, as well as a mixtape too. But she said, after she had signed with Bad Boy, their relationship was pretty platonic, and this is when we in the gallery, as well as the jurors too, were shown photos of her and Sean together. Another photo from the 2006 BET Awards with Cassie, Kim Porter, Sean Combs, and then another friend, all just kind of posing together on what looked like to be a red carpet. She was asked about Kim Porter specifically because at this time, Kim Porter and Diddy were still technically in a relationship. They were obviously co-parenting together because they had kids together at this point. And so when asked about Kim Porter, Cassie referred to her as Diddy's or Sean Combs' ex, as well as the mother of his children. She said, you know, even after signing with Bad Boy and stuff like that, that she had seen Sean a number of times, or a few times at the clubs. They were shown, the jury was shown another photo of a potential witness, that being Carrie Morgan, who was Cassie's best friend around that time frame, Diddy, Cassie, and then another friend on the couch. And this was pretty important. This was from her 21st birthday, and so this was something that was definitely talked about while the prosecution was kind of establishing the foundation between Sean Combs and Cassie. And so during this birthday trip this weekend, that Diddy had actually kissed her in the bathroom, and that's pretty important because at the time they weren't romantically involved. At this time, Diddy essentially just was an executive at the record label that she had worked at, obviously that being the one he had founded, being Bad Boy Records. And so she said after he had kissed her, it was actually kind of confusing. She said she was pretty young because, again, at that time she was just 21 years old. She said she was a new artist who didn't really know the lay of the land, and she said that she was pretty naive around that time. And she said even after the kiss that she had ran out of the bathroom. And so after the two had kissed on her 21st birthday, they had seen each other a couple of times afterwards, and then even went to visit Sean Combs at the Trump Hotel after she was invited by him specifically. She said that you know, for the most part, Diddy called all the shots of her music career. So when she went over to the hotel, she really thought she was going to be talking about music, talking about, you know, her recordings and that sort. So she said she was nervous to visit Diddy at the hotels, but just was essentially excited to talk about her career and where everything was going. But then, you know, that's not what happened in this hotel visit. She said essentially that she was introduced to the concept of oral sex while at this hotel. She said that, you know, Sean Combs had given her oral, and that it made her, that he kind of made her feel crazy for not reciprocating that. And so, she didn't do that because she said she was in a relationship at the time with somebody else. She said she felt sneaky, but she essentially just wanted to be around him because he was exciting, he was entertaining. And she said that, you know, it made her feel kind of special because not everybody was getting that time with Sean Combs. And even just think about that time frame. This was Puffy, this was Puff Daddy, this was Diddy, you know, this was somebody who was a big name. And so from her perspective, I can kind of see a little bit why she was a little excited to kind of go over there again under the guise that she was going to be talking about music, and that's not essentially what had happened. And then the prosecution talked about this trip to Miami, and this trip was also pretty important because this was a trip that they had taken. Carrie Morgan, Cassie's best friend at the time, was there. Dallas Austin, who was a music producer, was there as well too, and she referred to Dallas Austin as a friend. You'll remember Dallas Austin because he was on that People and Places list that the jurors were given during jury selection process. And so she thought initially that she was going to Miami for work, and a flyer was even made about her doing kind of a club appearance, a booking appearance down there. But instead she was having sexual intercourse with Sean Combs on a boat. She said even later that night, that's when she started she took a drug, and that was what they called a blue dolphin pill, was essentially ecstasy. She said she was given the ecstasy actually by Sean Combs, and that she had never taken a drug intentionally before. And she said intentionally because she said she unintentionally accidentally drank a drug from somebody else some other time, but that was the first time she intentionally did it. And again, that was kind of her first introduction to it. She said ecstasy kind of made her feel euphoric. And then us in the gallery, as well as the jurors, we saw photos of Diddy and Cassie on that boat together. And that's the boat where the two first had engaged in sexual intercourse for the first time. And then even after that trip, that's kind of where everything changed. She said essentially that they spent a lot of time together, and that she became one of Diddy's girlfriends. Now, at the time, she initially really just thought the two were monogamous because they spent so much time together. And she said even afterwards, you know, they didn't go public for years after that because publicly he was still dating Kim Porter. Even after this trip, she broke ties with her old management, and she said post-Miami trip, that's when she started falling in love with Sean Combs. She said she referred to herself as his shadow because that's how often the two were together. But she said that Sean Combs was her first adult relationship. We were later shown an exhibit. It was the photo of the two of them at a strip club in New York City together in Halloween of 2007. And we were shown photos of Sean Combs and Cassie in the back of a car together at their relationship. So you could really kind of see from her perspective, from what I saw from the exhibit, her just kind of smiling, her being what I perceived to be excited to be there. Again, she looks the same, right? But she was a little younger back then. And so after this trip, she said she was still enamored by Sean Combs, at first. But she said over time, that's when she started to kind of experience a different side of him. And for one example that she had used, it was like the physical abuse and even the controlling nature of Diddy, the way that she had looked, who she was speaking to and talking to. Essentially, that Diddy would call her every single day, all day, every day. It was either through texts, calls, and then later on FaceTime, because back then, we didn't necessarily have FaceTime, because you have to remember, just in the context of everything, that this, their relationship was a little bit a while ago, nearly almost 20 years ago, the start of it, I should say. And so, if there were times that she didn't answer the phone call, he would call her repeatedly. If she didn't answer the phone call, his staff would call her, and the staff included the assistants, the security. Said the staff would even go so far as to locate her in person if she didn't answer her phone. And she said that Sean Combs's or Diddy's moods impact her very greatly. She said she said when she would be abused, it wasn't really about her. She said there was physical and psychological abuse. She said even if she didn't smile the right way that he had wanted her to, he would say things along the lines of watch your face, watch your mouth. And essentially Diddy would tell her kind of who to be. And then that's how we kind of slowly started getting into more just of the relationship between Cassie and even Diddy's staff members, including his security team, who was around 24/7. Cassie named off names like D-Rock, Uncle Paulie, Bounds, Malik. When the assistants were named, it was important names like Christina Cora, David James, Neil Dominic. And so that's when we started to kind of get a glimpse a little bit into just her relationship with Diddy's staff too.
And a lot of things to break down there, right? I'm actually going to do a sidebar episode where I'm going to take Ventura's testimony and say how it actually matches up to the elements of the crimes that Diddy's charged with. But, talking about staff members, that definitely goes to racketeering, right? This common enterprise, allegedly using staff members and associates and chiefs of staff to further his criminal activity, to keep tabs on Cassie Ventura. And when you talk about controlling the way she looks and what she does, control, power dynamics, that goes to the overall theme of force, fraud, coercion, of sex trafficking. Very, very important. Again, I'm going to do a sidebar on that tomorrow. We have to talk now about the Freakoffs, okay? Because that was a central theme of her testimony, all right? So the Freakoffs make up the racketeering charge. The Freakoffs make up the sex trafficking charge. I read about it. I think that this was incredibly graphic but important testimony. So if we're saying that she was doing things against her will and that she was being forced to do it, Elizabeth, I'm going to turn it over to you. What did she say about the Freakoffs? What did she say about these sexual episodes?
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of graphic details that were a lot to kind of handle. When I was sitting in that courtroom, there were just moments where I was just like, oh my goodness, can we go for a break? Something like that. But again, I kind of have to commend Cassie for, being so calm, cool, and collected. There were emotional moments that she kind of teared up a little bit, and I'll get into that in just a sec. But as far as, these Freakoffs, she said there was even prep time, or she had to prep for these essentially. She said that, Sean Combs would make her get her nails done, and they had to be a certain way, and that included white nails or French tips for the Freakoffs. She had said that there was even discussion possibly about, breast implants as well too, that he had made comments about her physical shape, her working out, keeping up appearances. She had to get tan, she had to get waxed. So there was a lot of physical preparation when it came to just how she would appear, because according to her, Diddy controlled every aspect of it, from the way she looked, the way she talked, how she even performed within these sessions or freak-offs, because there's even a difference right there where a session was just inside the freak-off, where it was just like one moment that, you know, this encounter would happen, then they would take a break, go on to another moment, and that might not even be the entire freak-off. She said sometimes they would do 3 or 4 sessions just in one freak-off, and so the imagery is just, it was really just a lot. And so essentially, you know, she described it at first as, you know, that Diddy just wanted this to kind of be a fantasy. He wanted to watch, and that Diddy introduced her to this concept of swinging. And so there was a point where, you know, they were talking about it initially as just kind of voyeurism, where Diddy kind of would just watch. She said she was pretty shocked that he was kind of interested in this, but she said she essentially just didn't want to upset him. She said as far as the freak-offs go, that she was introduced to them in the first 6 months to a year of their relationship that they were doing this together. The other person would normally be a stranger, that being an escort or a male dancer. She was just 22 years old when she was first introduced to it, so very, very young. She said she agreed to even do it because she just wanted to make him happy. She asked why she agreed. She was asked why would she agree to do it, and Cassie at that moment said, "Great question." And so the first freak-off, she said, happened at his LA home in the bedroom. She said they kind of referred to this person as the first escort because she didn't remember his name, thought that he was a stripper from Vegas, knew that the escort was paid to have intercourse with her. She said during her first freak off, you know, she took ecstasy, she drank alcohol even before it had started, something that she had even talked about in her civil claim against Combs that was later settled. You know, they showed a photo to the gallery just of this particular first escort, because we didn't even know his name, but it was a black man. He had dreads, he had an earring in his left ear. It looked kind of like a driver's license photo, but even throughout the course of her testimony today, he was just referred to as the first escort. She said that Sean Combs would tell her to wear masks, and she wore heels during this. That Diddy kind of directed everything, including the lighting, putting the oil on the escort and vice versa. So essentially, Cassie and this escort would rub baby oil on each other. And so, you know, I was talking before about kind of the difference between the sessions and the freak-offs. So again, those sessions were just kind of a portion of the freak-offs. But these escorts were paid thousands of dollars to do this. She said that she had to, in order to kind of do these freak-offs, she would essentially have to get high just so that way she didn't feel much. But she said that it made her feel dirty. She said that right after her first one, Diddy soon proposed another freak-off, and she felt like she couldn't say no because she didn't want to make him upset, said that he would get angry and his moods would change if she told him no. And then after the first freak-off that she had did, they started to become more frequent, and by frequent she said that they would occur pretty much weekly, and those went on for years. She said her final freak-off wasn't until 2017, 2018, which is still relatively close to this time period, kind of right now. She said for the most part she didn't get much sleep during these freak-offs, but drugs kept help her stay awake, such as cocaine, such as Molly, MDMA, or ecstasy as well too, all that were given by Sean Combs. She said Sean Combs would decide, he would be the one to decide when these freak-offs would end. And she said that it was impossible essentially to remember the amount of freak-offs that she even did, because she was pretty much doing a whole bunch of drugs, and they were so frequent for the most part. And she said that she felt, you know, humiliated, and that she was all that this was all that she was good for. And this was an important part in the testimony, because this was the moment that she started tearing up. She pretty much had testified that she was being objectified during this, that Diddy would get so mad that if she didn't want to participate in this, that his eyes would go black. That's how mad he would get. And she said the only part that she actually liked about the freak-off was just the time that she had spent with Sean Combs, and this being this one-on-one time that the two had had with each other. She said that she had wanted Sean to know that the FOs made her, or the freak-offs had made her feel worthless, but essentially that Diddy dismissed her feelings. Diddy called her predictable. There was this one exhibit, an email exhibit that was shown where Cassie, her nickname under this email chain was BG standing for baby girl, and Diddy was referred to as Pop, which is kind of disturbing in itself, because he was named Pop Pop after her grandfather, and she thought it was weird and disrespectful. But from Diddy's point of view, this was something that he had allegedly wanted. And so the subject of this email was, "I really need to F." And this message from Pop Pop to baby girl said, "So who you gonna F? Want to call someone?" And so this email from was around 2010. And so the response was that she wanted to F him and said, "Are you crazy?" Because essentially when Diddy was receiving these messages, he just essentially assumed it was going to be for a freak-off. That means other people were going to be involved. Whereas from Cassie's point of view, she was kind of making the argument that she just wanted to spend time with her partner at the time, her boyfriend at the time. And so there was kind of a back and forth just about that Cassie had wanted to talk to Diddy about something, and that Diddy had called her predictable because that she didn't want to, assuming that she didn't want to participate in these freak-offs, and essentially that she said that from her standpoint, she didn't want Diddy to think that she didn't want to do it anymore, even though she didn't want to do it anymore, but essentially did it to make it make him happy. But even throughout these freak-offs, they were talking about disguised identity, that Diddy would wear a hat, he covered his face, he wore a mask. Cassie would even wear a mask, kind of one of those masquerade masks. She would wear a wig, she would wear see-through nets, she would wear very tall heels. She kind of even made the comparison to them being kind of like stripper heels. And essentially those were the disguise portion. The only time that they had kind of taken off the mask, taken off the disguises, was when they felt comfortable enough to do it with an escort. Because you have to remember, around this time, they were a little worried that one of these escorts could possibly be a cop. One of these escorts could possibly be somebody who would go and tell the entire world that they had done something with, Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura at the time. And so she was talking about how these freak-offs happen a lot of different places, including all of Diddy's homes except his home at Maple. Freak-offs happened in her home except her Studio City home. They had freak-offs in New York, in Miami, in Los Angeles, in Atlanta, in Turks and Caicos, in Vegas. And she named the hotels that she could remember doing these freak-offs at, because it wasn't just at Diddy's homes. It wasn't just at Cassie's homes. They were in hotels as well too. And just how the staff would kind of help provide things that they had needed for these freak-offs, such as condoms, such as Johnson & Johnson's baby oil, such as candles, such as lube, such as Astroglide, and that essentially all the participants use baby oil. This seems like a very big preference that Diddy had kind of had. And I know a lot of people kind of make jokes about it, but for the most part, it does seem like a prevalent thing that was very prominent in these freak-offs, and that a lot of bottles of baby oil were used, to the point she said 10 bottles were used in probably one freak-off, which is a lot of baby oil if you really think about it. She said, the Astroglide was used as lube as freak-off, something that she had even talked about in her civil suit against Combs. She said when they had run out of these types of supplies, that the staff would get more, the staff being the assistants would get more, or they would ask the bell desk for more at Diddy's direction. The candles were always lit. There were about 6 to 10 candles inside these rooms. There was even a point that she had mentioned that candle wax would be poured onto her. It would be poured onto Diddy. She said studio lights were later used in these freak-offs, and that they were red and purple and blue. Then we were shown a photo with Diddy. It looked like he was kind of laying on something. According to Cassie, he had a handful of cash in his hand that we couldn't see through this exhibit photo, but he was kind of laying in a red room. And so she said the freak-off rooms were particularly warm, according to her. And then this was kind of one of the more disturbing points that were talked about through her testimony, about them using extra linen not to soil the sheets in these hotel rooms. Why? Because there were points where blood and urine were going to be soiled into these fabrics, essentially. She said that she was even expected to have freak-offs while she was on her menstrual cycle, that Diddy and an escort would urinate on her, and that she didn't want to be urinated on. She said it was a turn on for Combs, but for herself, she felt humiliated going through this, said it was overwhelming. She said at one point she began even choking on the urine. And again, these are just very, very hard things to kind of listen to, and me even repeating them, I'm just kind of a little just unwell, just because it's really a lot, Jesse. I'm not going to even lie to you. And, you know, she was saying, I didn't want anyone to urinate on me, and she said this didn't really necessarily happen often, but it was often enough for her. And, you know, these were just very humiliating things, and you could tell that she was very soft-spoken throughout her testimony. So it was probably very uncomfortable for her to kind of talk about this, one in an open courtroom, one in front of Diddy, as well as even her husband and her brother and her mother, who were all inside that courtroom. And just, she was very soft-spoken throughout this. But essentially, that the staff would clean up the aftermath of these events. They would be charged thousands of dollars just for the damage that were done to it. She said half the time she said she was high on drugs during these while she was being urinated on. She said she didn't say no because she thought it was obvious that she didn't want to even do this. So it was a lot of graphic details, a lot of things. And surprisingly, I didn't see much of the jury kind of shake when this kind of testimony was going on. They were very much so kind of looking at Cassie very intently, very much listening to her. I would think that, you know, maybe somebody would get emotional or anything like that. But from what I could see, because my view was also very limited, I will also say that. But from what I could see, the jury didn't really flinch to this very disturbing testimony, this very hard testimony to listen to. But it seemed like they were just, you know, kind of absorbing everything that was being testified to. But from their perspective, I didn't see much of a reaction to this. But from us in the gallery, I know a lot of people were just kind of like, whew, this is a lot today.
And the urination might not even be the most disgusting point. I'll tell everybody, we're not going to repeat it here. Something that was reported about Sean Combs' nipples. You want to check it out? Go check it out on your own. It's pretty disgusting, to say the least. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the jury, you know, not grimacing, not wincing, not looking like they wanted to throw up from half these details. But look, from a legal point of view, it does become a question, right? How on earth could someone consent to all this? You know, 36, 48, 72 hours of these sexcapades, right? Where, you know, the urination and the Astroglide and the baby oil. Then it also becomes the question for the defense. And I'm sure when they have an opportunity to cross-examine her, why didn't you leave? Did you speak up loud enough? Why would you allow this to happen? Why didn't you go to the police? These are going to be questions that I'm sure are going to come up. But I do have to ask you now also, I think it was towards the end of the testimony, she was asked about the infamous 2016 videotape, right, of her purportedly being beat up by Sean Combs. It was the first piece of evidence the jury heard or saw yesterday, right, because we know a security guard testified to it, authenticated it. What did she say about that incident in particular?
So the government obviously had talked about this Intercontinental Hotel video, one in their opening statement, two with the first witness on the stand. And Cassie herself, when she got on the stand today, confirmed that she was leaving a Freakoff when this violent encounter had happened at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles. She said this happened while she was trying to leave a Freakoff. We were shown a text from that day, just kind of earlier. It was between Diddy and Cassie. Diddy had asked her, so what are you going to do so I can plan the rest of my night? Cassie had responded, baby, I want to FO so bad, but I don't want to F myself up. What am I to do? And essentially, she had talked about this because she didn't want to mess up her body by partying, as she kind of sometimes referred to these freak-offs as. She said that she didn't want to ruin a movie premiere that she was going to later on because she never had an opportunity to kind of enjoy things that she had worked hard for and didn't want to kind of mess herself up by being, you know, because she had pointed to that she would be on a lot of drugs when she would be doing these freak-offs. But she said from her standpoint that she wanted to kind of have a clear mind when she were to go to this movie premiere. But essentially, she did participate in this, and she said that even before she kind of exited that room that Sean had given her a black eye, and this was in between one of the freak-off sessions. So again, that's that portion of the freak-offs, not the entire thing or anything like that. And she said at a point where Diddy was distracted, she just left. And then she said everything just happened so quickly. Next thing she knew, she was thrown on the ground. So even from our perspective, we thought, you know, the first punch was taken from outside of the hotel room. According to her perspective, that first punch was happening inside that hotel room. And so she ran out of the door from what we had previously seen. She said from her standpoint, next thing she knew, she was thrown to the ground. The prosecution asked, why did she run out without some shoes? Because when we had first seen the video, even from the CNN portion, which was sped up, we had seen her kind of putting on her shoes. She was just in her socks from what it looked like, but she was putting on her shoes inside that elevator kind of hallway. She said she doesn't remember what Sean had told her exactly while he was hitting her. The government then played the video for her, and I was surprised at how she kept her composure just kind of while on the stand. But from her standpoint, this was just one of many physical violent encounters that she had had with Diddy while the two were together. So she confirmed that it was she and Diddy inside in that video. Said that Diddy had thrown her to the ground multiple times before. She said she stayed on the ground because we all remember kind of after that first hit that she had just kind of stayed there, just laid there on the ground. Just the image in my head right now, again, just it's a lot of heavy stuff today. She said she stayed on the ground because it was the safest place to be. She said that she didn't fight back when Diddy had hit her. She said she picked up a hotel phone while Diddy had held her purse and overnight bag. So essentially she had said that she didn't fight back when Diddy had hit her. That kind of the last few moments of this testimony from today, that she had picked up a hotel phone while Diddy had held her purse and overnight bag, and that was kind of the stopping point when it came to the government kind of showing her this video. So I expect when they return tomorrow, this will definitely be something that will be asked about again, and probably going into more depth about it again, because Emily Johnson said that she expects for Cassie Ventura to stay on the stand for pretty much half of the next day as well too. So that's halfway through Wednesday, and then they expect her cross to last up until Thursday at the minimum. And so Cassie Ventura still has a long amount of time to still be on the stand, still definitely hours worth. But from her perspective, it was definitely just kind of hard to kind of listen to her testimony, mainly because I said this yesterday, Jesse, that from the most part we had heard these allegations through attorney statements, through court filings and that sort, but to hear these things from her herself, to see her on the witness stand, to see her keep her composure, but even still at some points kind of had to just break emotionally, because it's a lot of things and a lot of hard things to recall. It's a lot of hard things for us to listen to. And so from her perspective, I can only imagine kind of what she's going through, on top of being very down the line in her third trimester. And there were even points she was kind of rubbing her belly, maybe that was something that kind of helped calm her down or just gave her some type of comfort. But today was a very hard day just to kind of listen to this testimony, and yet we still have more hours to go with it as well too.
Yeah, and look, that cross-examination will take quite some time to get through. I imagine tomorrow it's going to be discussion of the videotapes, these purported videotapes of sexual encounters, freak-offs. Will the gallery actually see them or not? We shall see. It probably, if I had to guess, it's going to be a situation where only the jury will be able to see and hear that, as well as the witness, and they'll be very careful in how they question her about this, because I think the risk of this getting out and being published is pretty high, and I think that they want to minimize that risk as much as possible. This is a difficult day, Elizabeth. I know it's not easy to hear this, but really, really appreciate you spending the time in the courtroom, capturing everything as possible, relaying to our audience in as much detail as possible, because unfortunately there are no cameras, there is no audio. We have the transcripts, but it's not the same. And to hear you describe her testimony, the first time that Cassandra Ventura made a substantial response to everything that has been going on, to me it read almost verbatim her complaint that she filed against Sean Combs in November of 2023, and to hear her talk about the infamous CNN video. This is a pivotal day in this case, in what is an 8-week trial, and thank you so much for relaying to us all those details. Elizabeth Milner, great as always. Thank you so much.